Story 1. Everything is so expensive. I should not be a qualified practitioner working full-time and barely able to afford living alone, worrying if I will ever afford to get a car, buy a home, or have children one day. Story 2. Cannot get a job. Companies do not even acknowledge your existence anymore. Story 3. I will never be able to afford a house unless I move far away from everyone I know and love. Story 4. The cost of living, the dating scene, social media, lack of a strong sense of community, and an everyone for themselves attitude. Story 5. I get to keep a very small fraction of my paycheck. What I do keep does not really buy much of anything. Story 6. Everything costs more, but paychecks do not increase at the same rate. Story 7. Feeling like I have very little control as one of the millions of functioning adults who continue to make the world move. The baby boomers will not retire or give up their jobs, homes, or political offices. The younger generation thinks they know everything but have completely unrealistic worldviews. I feel like both of these groups constantly come to me, demanding I solve their problems and support them while I continue to face challenges at every turn. Some of these issues are not unique to adulthood. This is just how life sometimes goes. Story 8. Watching my fellow countrymen enthusiastically hand us over to fascism, and the least appealing fascists at that. Story 9. Children and teenage influencers are now telling us what to do. Story 10. Just going blind. If I were not going blind, I suppose I would have no complaints. Story 11. The cost of everything. I know it might be just perception, but I do not remember other families and people struggling like this when I was growing up. My spouse and I both make more individually than either of our households did combined growing up, and we are still struggling. Story 12. Watching young adults forget about Google and ask fact-based questions on social media. For example, this is a great question on social media, whereas asking strangers what type of oil your car needs is just another level of foolishness. Google is synonymous with being a search engine, yet people think others provide better or more correct answers. Story 13. As a service-connected disabled combat veteran, I cannot find work or housing in or outside of the United States. I am a rideshare driver with over 25 years of work history, the ability to speak 5 languages, a working vehicle, 3 degrees, no criminal background, a clean rental history, and under 9% debt-to-income ratio. I have submitted more than 440 job applications on Indeed and over 40 apartment applications with no success. I have applied for visas in Australia, New Zealand, Spain, Portugal, Greece, Costa Rica, Canada, and South Africa, but I have been told that because I am over 35 years old and have bipolar disorder and complex post-traumatic stress disorder, I am not eligible. This is absurd. Story 14. The general crowd keeps getting younger, and I am constantly reminded of my own mortality. Story 15. Being governed by unqualified and incompetent oligarchs who do not care about what the electorate actually needs. Story 16. The fact that my childhood dream was staying up as late as I wanted, and now I am literally begging for a bedtime routine like a toddler. Story 17. Hope feels non-existent, and the future looks bleak, no matter how hard you have worked. Story 18. Watching my country commit suicide while also having to go through the steps of daily life as if all is normal. Oh, and making more money than ever but feeling broke. Story 19. I hate feeling like all the rules and guidelines that many of us were raised on were so quickly abandoned by older people we once looked up to. It is sad watching the state of the world and remembering how much optimism I had about it less than 15 years ago. Story 20. Everything is so expensive nowadays. The last time we went bowling as a family of 5, it was close to $100. That's insane. Story 21. Fearing that I will not be able to rent or own an apartment or house without going into debt or having to live with several other people to be able to pay rent. Story 22. Everyone seems like they have not grown up and still act like teenagers. Story 23. Knowing that the life I want to live is completely up to the choices I make daily. Story 24. Seeing the direction the world is heading but lacking the ability to change it or any means of escaping the consequences. Especially here in the United States, our leadership is gutting the nation for their own profit. Additionally, They are stripping human rights and erasing history in a way that will take at least decades to make right again. It is not just one party, and it is not only happening in the United States. The end result is that we eventually inherit a husk of a world that is far more hostile than it used to be. Many of us do what we can, but being powerless and seeing the situation get worse is exhausting. I have so much sympathy for the young people who will have to make it work using what remains. Story 25. Seeing all the problems in society that we have solutions for, but half the world does not want to take action and actively obstructs any attempt to do so. Story 26. Subscribe for no ads. We decided we want more money, so now you are getting ads. If you want no ads again, you will have to pay more. We still want more money, so we are increasing your previously agreed upon cost and automatically charging you the new amount. It is probably somewhere in the 400-page terms of service that they are allowed to do that, but it does not make it any less unfair. There should be a clear prompt asking if you agree to the new price and terms before a new charge is completed. Story 27. Everyone keeps saying, "It's because you are a millennial. You are used to getting trophies for everything and not having to earn it." First of all, I was a blue-collar kid and have had to earn everything that I have. I also had multiple jobs for years trying to make ends meet. I have also gotten one trophy, and that is because I won it. So take your comment and shove it. Story 28. I cannot afford the same childhood for my children that my parents could afford for me. They are blissfully unaware, so I just try to keep a smile. Story 29. We are constantly bombarded with ultra-processed foods that the government knows very well make us quite sick and unhealthy. Story 30. I am grateful to be an adult. Young people have it very complicated. Story 31. How intentionally beyond foolish and incompetent everyone has become. Story 32. Awareness of this divided United States. It was not so long ago that most politics and politicians made no sense to me, and I was able to ignore it. Now I understand it, startlingly so. The tension is palpable. Story 33. I had an extremely expensive home repair, which has left me needing to pick up a second job because working full-time is not covering my expenses. Story 34. Having so much information and so little wisdom, both as an individual and when observing society at large. Story 35. I used to joke about this, but I have now confirmed that we are witnessing the actual downfall of civilization. The best years on Earth for humans were from 1960 to 2020. It is all downhill from here. Story 36. Adults who should have been neutered instead have children, and somehow their poor parenting is considered everyone's fault and responsibility. Story 37. Everything is expensive. I just want to be able to afford groceries for my family. I am tired of paying tax on checks, tax on purchases, tax on buying a car, tax on a license plate, tax on registering it, and annual property tax. We threw tea into the harbor over a 2% tax on tea. My husband loses 40% of his paycheck before we even see a penny of it to various taxes and fees. Story 38. Watching the news, it is filled with many stressful and negative things. Story 39. Boomers refuse to give up control even as their world falls apart. Generation Z and Generation Alpha appear to be completely lost and unable to cope with reality. My own era, Millennials and Generation X, are increasingly isolated and unable to find and form friendships based in the real world. The music industry is decimated due to streaming, and most new music is terrible. Movies are strange now. I spend most of my life within my own little bubble of my partner, old school friends, and relatives, consuming thoughts and art created decades ago. Story 40. There is nothing positive to talk about right now. If you try to find something positive to mention, someone shuts it down. Everything is bad, made by bad people in a bad place. There is nothing to be excited about anymore because someone will give you a reason to feel bad for being happy. I just feel like there is no good reason to be alive right now. Story 41. Knowing the least stressful part of my life is over, and all I have to look forward to in my remaining years are bills. Story 42. I hate how the power has shifted. I feel like we used to have some sort of power against the companies in the past, but now we are all just at the mercy of companies and money. Everything is too expensive, and the dream of owning a house with a white picket fence has been destroyed. Story 43. Dealing with Nazis and evangelical groups ruining the world for everyone else, including other species and nature itself, all for money, which is man-made. Crazy. Story 44. The quality of almost everything you can buy is worse than 20 years ago, and it costs more in real terms. Story 45. Being intelligent has become a dangerous disposition. Story 46. Parent here. No matter how you approach raising a child, thanks to the internet, there is a never-ending deluge of information telling you how wrong you are. Strict bedtime? You monster. No bedtime? You monster. Formula fed? Monster. Baby-led weaning? Believe it or not, monster. I would like to search one parenting question without being judged by the collective opinion of the internet. Story 47. People making politics their whole identity and the high cost to just exist. Story 48. I keep working hard to get ahead and give myself a better life, but the economy takes every raise I receive. Story 49. I make decent money and work a lot of overtime, 60 to 70 hours per week, and still do not make enough to come close to buying a house. Story 50. Anyone with a brain can see that we are sleepwalking into our own ruin, but saving ourselves is not profitable enough, so it will not happen. I am just supposed to keep going to work and pretend everything is fine. Story 51. Seeing my country go from a flawed but functional democracy that was sometimes a force of good in the world in the 1990s to an international menace ruled by a boorish autocrat. The first song I ever sang in public was God Bless America, which I sang to the appreciative residents of my grandmother's nursing home when I was 3. The dim memory of that haunts me now. Story 52. Having to exist on defense with the base assumption that every single entity and person is trying to take advantage of you and deceive you. Healthcare, your own government, the press, banks. There is no institution you can implicitly trust to do right by you. Story 53. Things I hate in general. The excessive number of bills as a single adult. The fact I work 40 hours a week and do not have any savings to show for it. Something fails or breaks, and I do not have the means to replace it anymore. My car broke down 2 months ago, and I have been using the bus since. I understand driving is a luxury, but being on the bus in your 30s is frustrating. I cannot imagine how older people feel about this. Setback. I hate that it is cheaper to eat unhealthy fast food than to buy ingredients to make a meal at home. I hate that no one can ask for help or advice anymore without there being a monthly subscription cost. I hate that we are turning into a society that records everything, and watching someone's death on platforms like TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram is becoming normalized. Being an adult in 2025 is overwhelming. Story 54. Existence is expensive. Consumer culture constantly promotes products to buy, but affording the essentials alone is difficult on what was a good salary only a few years ago. Story 55. Life is expensive. Adults turn to politics, thinking it will save us and that the current system will fix anything. Story 56. The bills and how tickets for activities I want to do cost more than my rent. Story 57. Adulting is a scam. How I wish I could remain a child forever. Story 58. No job prospects in a poor and worsening job market. My rights being eroded. The fear of authoritarianism sinking its teeth irrevocably for decades in America. Story 59. Anything to do with an insurance company should be utterly rejected. In a properly functioning society based on full equality and community betterment, there would be no need for insurance or financing. Story 60. The consistent feeling of hopelessness regarding a future involving human rights or even a planet that is not ruined. I work full-time, have an associate degree, and am working on my 4-year degree, yet I still need assistance from family for mental health care to function day to day and keep moving forward. To be honest, I need dental work but cannot address it because even with insurance, I cannot afford the copays. My job is to help people with disabilities and those living in poverty get the medical care they need. I see how difficult it is to navigate the limited options available, and those options are incredibly difficult to access due to timing. Services are provided on a first-come, first-served basis, and I work during their hours. There are more people needing services than can possibly be helped. Until it becomes an emergency, I will have to make do. Story 61. Being 27 and still cannot afford to buy a home. I will probably be renting until I die. Story 62. Being told growing up that if I want to be successful, I need to go to school. I buried myself in a solid $80,000 worth of school debt to become a chemist. Now combine my low-paying chemistry job with my student loan debt, and I'm actually much worse off than all of my friends who did not go to school. Most of them are homeowners, while I was told I don't qualify to buy a house because my student loan debt is too high. I have been denied on all of my applications. I eventually got approved for a $200,000 loan. Combine that with the high interest rates in this country, and once again my high student loan repayment, the mortgage is way too high to afford. Great system we have, let me tell you. Story 63. The cost of living is very high. When you are sick, you need to be proactive and manage all the logistics. Unlike when you are a child, most of it is done for you. Story 64. Money feels like a burden. Whenever I have some disposable income, I have to pay for something. I rarely get to enjoy just having money. Story 65. Knowing that at age 30 the cost of living in America is very high compared to what it was when my parents were 30, and the ruling elite have made each passing decade harder to make a living, I will be sure to keep chasing my dreams despite all of that. Story 66. The constant struggle of trying to decide whether I should stay and fight or leave and watch it all burn down from a distance. Story 67. Knowing that I cannot do anything about the situation in the Islamic State, while a narcissistic person flails around on live television having temper tantrums and inventing their own reality. All the while, the people who can do something about this are not acting. I hate feeling powerless. Story 68. Making friends as a middle-aged man is already difficult enough. To find that of the few I do have, learning about their negative political beliefs because extreme nationalism has been normalized, and I have to cut those people off too. Story 69. I hate that I love social media and showing my life, but I feel that I don't have anything cool to show anymore to the people I have added. Like half of them are traveling the world, and the other half have cool corporate jobs. I don't have any of that, and I don't feel anything is worth posting. Is somebody else feeling like that too? I am in my late 20s, by the way. Story 70. Using my money for things that I do not want to buy or do. Story 71. The way colleagues try to interfere with me even though I stay in my own lane. Story 72. Most of my week is spent working and not spending time with my family. Story 73. A giant meteor is not going to wipe out this terrible excuse for a civilization. Story 74. I hate the outlook of being an adult today. There used to be a sense of optimism that things were getting better, maybe too slowly, but if we just kept moving forward, things would improve. That did not mean there were no wars or political crises, but those felt like separate issues that did not necessarily affect the fate of the American empire. As a whole, diseases would eventually be cured, technology would continue to advance, and society would slowly become more functional, tolerant, and educated. Story 75. Seeing people act foolishly and waste others' money while I try my hardest and barely get by. Sometimes, I think I would rather be unaware of my impact on others and society than be sensible and feel miserable with the world. Story 76. Basic wage jobs are unsatisfactory nowadays. In 2019 to 2020, they were decent, not the best, but acceptable. Now they are completely unsatisfactory. Story 77. If I sit at my desk too long, it feels like my knees are going to explode off my body. I am 25. Story 78. The job market and shrinkflation also make everything look so cold and corporate. Story 79. Good salary, but barely anything left over because everything is so expensive, mostly housing. Story 80. If Kamala Harris had won, I probably could have retired in a couple of years. Now I just hope to have a job until I can drop dead at my desk. Story 81. Losing people. The older I get, the more I lose. Nothing and no one ever replaces them. New friends are always good to have, but they are nothing like the ones who remember your entire story. Story 82. Making nearly $30 an hour and still somehow living paycheck to paycheck. Story 83. The uncertainty of the future. Everything feels like it is teetering on the edge of collapse. Story 84. Seeing people become homeless and how difficult it becomes for them to leave homelessness. Many homeless people have jobs, but the federal uniting and strengthening America by providing appropriate tools required to intercept and obstruct terrorism act requires a residential address to open a bank account. I love the United States, but I am not sure if America is now an oligarchy because of decisions like Citizens United and powerful lobbyists and secret political action committees. Story 85. Sorry to be that person who brings politics into the situation, but really, my least favorite part is that I can no longer trust the democratic process in the United States. In any other election cycle, no matter how much you dislike things, there was at least consolation in knowing it would be 4 years or less until a new election that could change things. Now, we don't even have that guarantee. There is a non-zero chance that the republic no longer exists and we are a Russia-style oligarchy for the rest of our lifetime. Story 86. Seeing fictional depictions of young adulthood in past decades and realizing that the sorts of leisurely and carefree lives depicted are no longer possible unless your parents are wealthy and both willing and able to support you financially in some way. Obviously, sitcoms and romantic comedies were never known for their rigid adherence to reality, such as the Friends rent control phenomenon or Frasier having seemingly unlimited money as a local radio host. Nevertheless, these sorts of lives were considered broadly relatable at the time. Now, the vast majority of American college graduates work more than 50 hours a week, live in a tiny home in an undesirable location or have flatmates, and spend what little downtime they have taking care of errands and unpleasant necessities, and maybe, if they are lucky, getting some rest so they can recover and recharge to enjoy another exhausting, overwhelming workweek. Thinking about checking out of the rat race and pursuing a simpler but less difficult life? Seeing the crowds of unhoused people milling about whenever you go basically anywhere will scare you into compliance. When we were children, panhandlers were much rarer and only really existed in busy public squares and downtown pedestrian streets of major cities. Now they are everywhere, even in small suburbs. This is obviously the result of multiple political problems that have been allowed to fester for the last half-century. I believe that the ruling class likes having them around as living reminders to the general population of what their fate will be if they stop being useful to their superiors. Story 87. Having to work full-time and still cannot afford to pay my bills. Story 88. Having to hear the opinions of children used to be rare unless you had kids or worked as a teacher. Now, a lot of the time, I see really bad opinions online from children. Story 89. The cost of living is still increasing, and recently, entry-level jobs have actually decreased their starting wages. It is unclear how people in this area will be able to continue living here. Story 90. Not having access to affordable healthcare when I am unwell and cannot afford even antibiotics is frustrating. When I complain, people tell me to get a job. I have a job. They suggest I get a second job. That is not the solution here. Story 91. The cost of living is too high. Even with my current wages, free meals at work, and upcoming promotion, I doubt that I will ever be able to afford to have a family someday unless I marry into money or win the lottery. Story 92. 1. The lack of interactions and conversations with everyday people and strangers. 2. Feeling like I cannot do anything unconventional without the thought of being recorded. 3. The constant rush of day-to-day living. Story 93. Everything is expensive, and 90% of it will break within 6 months to 1 year. Story 94. Many of the social and political problems we face collectively are completely unnecessary, and it drives me up a wall. Many solutions to these problems, solutions that everyday people would fully support, are non-starters because the people who could enact change are the same ones in power who benefit from the status quo. Congressional term limits, campaign finance reform, removing corporate interest from lawmaking, eliminating exorbitant government spending, stopping pharmaceutical companies from price gouging life-saving medications, these issues remain unaddressed. It seems this cycle will never end, and both sides want it to continue. In the meantime, we are all distracted by meaningless issues, such as what bathroom everyone should be using. Story 95. Everything is smaller and costs more. Our corrupt stock market only works if companies always increase profits every year, Infinite profits in a finite economy. The way they do this is not by being innovative and making new and better products. It is by giving you less and charging you more. There is no competition. All the companies are owned by the same parent corporations, so they just work together, and our government does nothing to break the monopolies. I started renting my apartment in 2019 for $550 per month. It is now $910 per month, and literally nothing has changed. Same worn carpet, same dingy appliances, not a single thing added or removed by the property managers in 6 years. Yet my rent has gone up by almost $400. I would buy a house, but every house under $200,000 in my area is in worse condition than my apartment. Despite working 60 hours of overtime every paycheck, I cannot feasibly save enough for a down payment to make a mortgage even somewhat affordable. But everybody in my town is more worried about transgender people and the LGBTQ+ community and think they are the source of all their problems, when 90% of them are in similar or worse situations than I am. At least I have the physical ability to work myself to the bone to stay afloat. They would rather blame the LGBTQ+ community than blame the incompetent politicians they keep electing. Politicians who allow this corrupt system to focus on enriching the current wealthiest 1% instead of building an economy that can support future generations. I hate that the current cost of living in the United States is $61,000, while the median household income is $39,000. Over half of American citizens cannot afford to live in America, yet politicians tell you that it is those people's fault that a majority of residents cannot afford to live here. Story 96. Other adults. Or well, just the unintelligent ones, and the rude ones, and those with a huge sense of entitlement, and those with no self-awareness. Yes, just call them other adults. Story 97. Everything corporate America took. Our paid time off, our portion sizes at restaurants, and our disposable income. Story 98. So, growing up, there were undesirable cuts of meat that would make the best food ever. Many authentic recipes use the cheapest cuts, but now every source of protein has a premium on it. Story 99. Not even trying to sound cool or anything. I worked so hard through most of my 20s, missed out on fun trips with friends, lost some sleep, took some hard losses, sacrificed my own time just to get ahead of everyone. And it did not really get me anywhere. I have a good job, my bills are paid, but I have no real assets or wealth under my own name. I always think back and ask myself, what was it all for? But it will pay off one day, hopefully. Story 100. Not very important or relevant, but there is an expectation by everyone to have children. I have said I do not want children since I was a child, and my father, grandparents, and many other family members are all like, but you will, and you will change your mind, and all that. It drives me up the wall. Did you not hear me? Story 101. The stress we are experiencing with our 16-year-old son is overwhelming. He is showing signs of depression, and it seems as if nothing we say or do can help him overcome it. People believe that things get easier as children grow older, but the challenges only become more serious. Story 102. Seeing a system that, while benefiting me, harms most of humanity. Story 103. How everything is planned obsolescence. I inherited a chest freezer from my father who bought it used in the 1970s, and it was probably made in the early 1960s. It is still running to this day, has never given me issues, and is quiet in my apartment. We also owned a chest freezer he bought in 2015, which quit working right before he passed. Story 104. Millennial here. I'm tired, everyone, like holistically exhausted. I've been living in unprecedented times almost my entire life. Story 105. Nothing. I would not want my parents in charge while all this goes on. I am thanking my lucky stars that I am an adult and my parents are not the ones in charge. The closest I can come is that I would have rather gone through this 20 years ago when I was in an even better position to deal with it. Story 106. How easy it is to spend $1,000 and how hard it is to save $1,000. Story 107. As soon as it is my turn to be an adult, the world decides to go into flames, and the generations before me put all the blame on younger people instead of helping us fix the problems they neglected until those problems started affecting them as well. Story 108. For the past 6 years, I have been satisfied with just surviving each day. Thinking further ahead than that is too much for me. Story 109. There is no democracy in America. The only right you have anymore is to pay your bills. Story 110. I am lonelier and more touch-starved than ever before. I am experiencing a lack of sexual intimacy. Story 111. My moral compass is as strong as it has ever been, and it is impacting my relationships with family and friends. Based on current events. Story 112. I make nearly 6 figures, and I cannot afford a beach home. I could have if I had been an adult during my youth. Story 113. I do not understand why my entire life, both as a child and an adult, has been one unrequited love and disappointment after another. When will it end? Story 114. Dating and the constant cycle of things getting more expensive. Story 115. Everything. Mostly Generation Z. They believe they know it all. I have witnessed them arguing with Generation X about the 1980s. It is really weird. Story 116. We need to treat other adults with respect, even if they have the most ill-informed beliefs. Story 117. I cannot protect my child's mental health with all the political issues happening in my country. Story 118. Friends living 20 minutes away, but somehow I only see them twice a year. Story 119. The spread of willful ignorance. If someone does not like reality, they call it a hoax or fake news or whatever they want. We are not Homo sapiens, but Homo stupidus. Story 120. Responsibility. Can I be a kid again, clueless about economics and just thinking my parents are cheap because they do not want to buy me that $700 PlayStation 5 or $80 games? Story 121. I am almost 52. I have had a full-time job since I was 17 and out of high school. I worked part-time during school and full-time during summers since I was 12. At best, I still have to work another 11 years before I can consider retiring. I am so tired of working. The worst part is all my hobbies and passions are for young men, not older people, so I will not even get to enjoy them if and when I do retire. Story 122. The government announces that welfare recipients receive extra money on a specific day of the month. I do not want to see people shopping and assume they are in that situation. It is hard enough to be in financial difficulty. Why share that information with everyone? Story 123. How the previous generation has made and continues to make everyone's life too expensive while refusing to admit that life is harder. Story 124. The bills just do not seem to get any better, especially when you are already behind. Story 125. Social media. I hate most social media applications because I do not like being pushed advertisements and brand deals constantly. It is frustrating because I often do not understand popular culture and social media references, and it makes me seem socially awkward in group settings. I also dislike the dating culture nowadays. I have given up on trying to meet people because I feel like many of my life goals are more old soul, and I do not enjoy texting and flirting over the phone. Story 126. Other adults believe that because they are over the age of 18 and have completed their last level of education, they know everything. Story 127. Being blamed for the trauma my baby boomer parents caused. They treated us all poorly, but somehow we are seen as dramatic for all having complex post-traumatic stress disorder and having the latter pulled up by the self-centered generation. Story 128. 40-hour workweek. I want more time to spend with my family. Story 129. I thought adults could change what is wrong with the world. Turns out, even as an adult, you cannot change anything. So, you just fix the small broken things around you and move on. Story 130. Having to put up with Make America Great Again. It just wears me down, and I am trying to avoid reading the news so much. Story 131. Work is like a soft prison. It locks you in, and you have to be there for half of your life. Otherwise, you starve, get kicked out, and have no place to live. It is pretty sad, to be honest. When I was a child, I thought humans were meant to be free when they grew up. Story 132. Not being able to save or buy anything, searching for basic living essentials. Story 133. Seeing houses, cars, stores, and fast food places continue to lose their color and uniqueness, resulting in all of them looking the same. Story 134. Waking up sore from sleeping wrong. I used to survive all-nighters on 2 Red Bull energy drinks. Now, one weird pillow angle takes me out for a week. Story 135. Yes, I am broke, and since unions and tariffs, I cannot get overtime anymore. Story 136. The pain of it all. The overall feeling of anguish, anxiety, and depression is felt throughout the world. You can feel the heaviness and the realization that we are all forced to play along with the violence happening everywhere. I hate that. I hate feeling isolated all the time. I hate seeing the dehumanization of people being dismissed and talked down about constantly. When I watch the news, all I see are fragments of what is happening overseas. I did not know that Canada is distancing itself from the United States due to the president's actions until much later. I am aware of the horrific trauma affecting the people of Sudan and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, but I have not seen pain like in Palestine, which is not their fault. Palestine is just very visible right now. While it is not their fault, I feel like social media algorithms are using their pain to silence what is going on in Congo, Sudan, or Tigray. I desperately want peace. I want peace to exist for those who have been oppressed. I want Puerto Rico to be free. I want Haiti to be free. I want Congo, Sudan, Tigray, and Palestine to be free. I want Armenia, Lebanon, and Ukraine to be free. I want freedom. I feel trapped in my own way. I feel trapped on a fast-moving train that is on fire. I feel myself slowly being burned alive while watching all of our rights either in the process of being destroyed or already burned away. It is like what I imagine being Alice from Alice in Wonderland is like. Slowly losing my mind and watching everyone else act so normal in a place that does not make any sense. Here I think, have I died and gone to purgatory? Is this hell? Are we being punished for going against Mother Nature and forgetting our place as her beautiful family? It is almost a debilitating thought. Being an adult while seeing your taxes hurt millions of innocent people and watching people suffer is not something I wish on anyone. Story 137. Essentially living paycheck to paycheck. Edited to add. As a dual-income household with me having a bachelor's degree and my husband having his Master of Business Administration. Story 138. Really immature people who lack the slightest ability for critical thinking. Story 139. Advancements in technology tend to make everyone's life worse, which was not the case when I was young. Story 140. People are not mentally adults. Many things feel the same as when I was a teenager. I am surprised by a lot of people and how they handle situations. Story 141. The cost of practically everything feels like life was on sale when we were kids, and now it is full price. Story 142. The rise of anti-intellectualism, the poor state of the job market, people acting like they know everything about a topic despite knowing nothing, and refusing to conduct research or consider others' experiences, the existence of billionaires while most of us are barely scraping by, and a normalized lack of empathy are just a few issues. Story 143. I cannot truly own anything. When my parents wanted to buy a house, they worked overtime and saved up because it was feasible. Now, working overtime is not enough anymore. You will just do all that overtime, burn out, and still not be able to afford a house. It is disheartening. Story 144. Everything is a competition. I am a 40-year-old man in 2 bowling leagues. These grown men cheat for a hand at $150 split 4 ways. I do not have time for it. Story 145. Many adults act as if they never grew up. They show no desire to compromise, display excessive selfishness, and are unwilling to communicate or follow rules. It is as if everyone became Peter Pan, but as a self-centered person. Story 146. Women being blamed for corporate capitalism, unemployment, and the large disparities between the richest 1% and the middle class is significant. I could never have had the comforts my parents had with their modest income. My mother was a teacher, and my father was a retired civil servant. Story 147. Every single day feels like a subscription service I forgot to cancel. Rent, bills, groceries, insurance. The struggle never stops. Story 148. Nothing works anymore. Websites crash, airlines scramble flights, the post office loses your mail, customer service lines hang up on you, supermarkets hold sales on items that are not actually there, appliances and televisions fail after a few years, restaurants are overpriced and mediocre. The quality of every product, service, and customer experience is in decline. Story 149. How much everything costs. I am living paycheck to paycheck. That simply is not sustainable. Story 150. Everything that brings me joy is bad for me, and everything is expensive. Working out and getting sunshine do help, but I have to do many things to actually achieve this. Story 151. 19 years old. Giving life and financial advice online. Story 152. The cost of living is extremely high. The minimum wage is no longer a livable wage. In my state, the minimum wage is $15. Story 153. I have been the sole earner for my family for years. Everything is becoming more expensive, which was already difficult. 2 weeks ago, I lost my job of 15 years. Now I have a wife and a toddler relying on me to pay the mortgage and many other bills, but I have no active income. I keep remembering that I have a large life insurance policy, so if the worst happens, I can let them cash it in. Story 154. Liberals blame Republicans, and Republicans blame liberals. People who identify as progressive pretend they are not influenced while trying as hard as possible to stay exactly in the middle. Meanwhile, everyone is being manipulated, charged for everything, and cannot do anything about it. Story 155. Getting a job when you have a physical or mental illness is challenging, even when working with a rehabilitation program designed to help individuals find employment. Story 156. The demands are an opportunity for thousands of businesses simply for existing and having an email address and phone number. They range from pointless solicitors to institutions that define my very validity as a member of society. Existing should not be this difficult. Story 157. I am obligated to care about what an individual with harmful intentions thinks. Story 158. Not sure if this counts, but I miss my childhood so much. I have been doing a lot of reflection lately and wish I could relive precious memories again or avoid things I regret. I had loving parents and did really well in school, but unfortunately, I suffered a mental breakdown and had to drop out. My biggest regret was not asking out my crush after finding out she had feelings. For me, it still hurts a lot knowing I missed a chance at finding love. Being an adult is really tough, and I worry a lot about my mother and dealing with responsibilities. I wish I could go back to the days when I had less anxiety and was free to enjoy life the way I wanted. Thankfully, I am doing a lot better now after seeing a private therapist every week and taking antidepressants. Story 159. We have had to deal with the former president and his self-proclaimed followers for almost 10 years. Story 160. Working and still not being able to even think about buying my own place. Story 161. The difficult job market says you need a minimum of 5 years of experience for entry-level jobs. People are often unreliable with networking. I just graduated from university, and it is hard to get a chance for jobs that do not even require education. Story 162. Complete lack of job security. It used to be that if you did your job well and did not upset anyone, then you were pretty safe. These days, companies are outsourcing everyone who has knowledge and downsizing to the bare minimum. Now, they also have a strong enthusiasm for artificial intelligence so they can terminate employees after implementing it. Artificial intelligence is a force multiplier for our employees, more like a headcount divider. Story 163. The cost of healthcare. Getting older is no joke, but even basic trips to the doctor are more than $100 with insurance. Out-of-pocket expenses on the employer plan are around $15,000. I just keep my fingers crossed that I can stay healthy a while longer. Story 164. Bills like why am I paying for every single thing in life? Story 165. I would love to be a 25-year-old adult again. That was 45 years ago. I want a mulligan. Story 166. I just want to bring some happiness to this post. At least we are not kids in 2025. Story 167. I shouldn't have to worry about money, but I do. I make 3 times what my parents did, so why do I live in a small condominium and not a big house like my parents? Capitalism is the reason. Story 168. Overworked, underpaid, and socializing or dating feels impossible. Story 169. Waking up every morning and having to choose between soul-crushing work or soul-crushing homelessness. Story 170. The fact that a dollar does not stretch as far as it did when I was a child. Story 171. It does not matter what I do. I can get a raise, but everything is becoming expensive. When you open the news, it is full of gloom and despair. I cannot make a living wage because it means chief executive officers cannot hit their bonuses. Story 172. Juggling everything while still trying to enjoy life. That's why I always tell myself not to let adulthood become only responsibilities. Story 173. Life has become expensive, and the things my parents could do with a regular job I cannot. My family has to support me in order to survive, even though I am a fully fledged adult. The choice to have children is no longer an option. There is no way I am bringing children into this world, and I am saddened that current circumstances have made this decision for me. I am concerned that I will not be able to support myself or my aging parents when the time comes. I once had so much hope and promise for my future as a child, but it feels lost. I have accepted this now and am in the process of planning for a new future, but it is difficult. Story 174. It's easy to feel that if all your plans go wrong, they do so for the best. Sometimes, no matter how hard you try, things just do not go well. Instead of offering reassurance, some people say hurtful things like you are lazy and do nothing with your life, without recognizing the effort you have already put in. Story 175. The number of grown adults with low emotional maturity levels that I have to interact with literally drains me. Story 176. I will likely never be able to afford my own place as a single person. The dating scene is terrible. I envy friends who found their long-term partners either before dating apps or before dating apps became so bad. Feels like they got the last chance out of Vietnam. Story 177. The complicated aspect of meeting a partner suddenly became a game of power, ego, and control. The simplicity of being heterosexual, conventional, and exclusive is rare. Story 178. Living in the United States, watching expatriate videos on TikTok about how much better their lives are abroad, only to not be able to afford leaving, let alone leaving behind aging parents. Story 179. Digitizing everything. I think there is a big analog movement coming back with the next generation. Story 180. I wish I could go so far back in time that I would not feel the need to do drugs because I would be useful to myself and my tribe in a healthier way. Story 181. Being an adult in 2025 means paying rent as if you were an owner, but living as if you were a guest. Story 182. Life in 2025 is basically a pay-to-win game. If you do not have money, you just stand there doing nothing. Story 183. There is more reliance on social media than in person. People are more distant now. Story 184. When you are an adult, your parents finally pass away, along with your grandparents. It is the worst thing about getting older. You never get over their passing. You only try to deal with it. Story 185. What happened to having in-person one-on-one interviews? I spent most of my life working for my uncle, but when I left his company, all I knew about getting jobs was to dress nicely and be professional. However, most jobs nowadays are done entirely on a computer. Story 186. I regret leaving my bait and switch job after the first day. I am getting interviews for new jobs but no offers so far. Story 187. Housing and everyday expenses are a significant struggle, even with a decent household income. Story 188. I'm off to bed, everyone. It's late here in England. Story 189. Seeing negative posts like this by people projecting their suffering onto others. If you hate being an adult, it sounds like you are struggling to free yourself from mental attachments you feel obligated to complete but are not truly necessary for your survival. I hate seeing most of the world's youth losing their innocence due to adults who are ignorant of the newer generations, exposing them to adult content through visual or audio means. Shameless society. Story 190, Being Alive. I have been through so much already, and the minute I regain my will to live, everything goes wrong. Why couldn't I have been born in a less chaotic time? Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.